The bells for prime had not yet been rung when Cersei woke, though the city was already awake without them. The Red Keep breathed and settled around her like a great cat at rest, its stones retaining the night's coolness, its shutters ticking in the faint breath from the sea. She lay still a long while, measuring the quiet. Even at this hour she could hear the far hiss of the Blackwater ebbing and the faint, industrious tap of a servant's heel in some corridor beyond the bedchamber, the discreet clatter of a tray set on a sideboard, the metallic sigh of a girth strap drawn tight in a stable. Small sounds, ordinary sounds. Her mind counted them and weighed them as if their obedience to routine could be an omen. The bed linen smelled of old lye and lavender. She had not slept well. When she closed her eyes, faces assembled behind her lids. Her father's cool regard, her brother's crooked smile, her son's soft and confounded gaze, her daughter's laughter that belonged to a river she would never stand beside, and behind all of them the round, polished face of the High Sparrow, with his pale brows like sifted ash. She turned her head on the pillow and watched the first gray light coin the edges of the chamber. The carved bedposts, the chair back, the black lip of a wine cup abandoned near the hearth. It promised a fair day. The light was clear, not smudged by fog. A clear day would fill the September to its rafters. When she rose, she did so without haste and without lookers-on, allowing herself the small sovereignty of slowness. She washed her face in the basin herself and did not call for the maids. The water had a sediment of copper chill that she liked. It woke the seams of her mouth and eyes. She saw in the mirror the face they would try today, and as she stood there the thought gathered in her that it was still her face. The mirror, thin, wavy glass that made a ghost of her left cheek, offered the truth she'd come to accept. Beauty grown severe. The yellow hair the singers had insisted upon had darkened by degrees. She had not noticed until it had already left its coins of gold and become a crown of metal. Once, when she had been told she was beautiful, men had been the mirror. Now there was only the glass and whatever Cersei wished to read in it. The mouth set and filled with patience, the eyes with their own hard light. By habit she reached for the ring on her finger and turned it. The stone was a nugget of smoky quartz, unpretending, the sort one selected when the better gems lay elsewhere. That suited her. She did not dress at once. She stood by the window and breathed with deliberation. The sea's breath came up to her with the smell of salt and tar and old hemp, and beneath it another, sweeter smell. Baked loaves from the baker's ovens, a long street of flour. It might have been any day, if one did not look at the harbor where the masts were as crowded as spears in a field. The city hungered for spectacle as for bread, and even the bargemen had found reasons why their cargoes must be delivered near the hill of Baelor this morning. There came a tap on the chamber door. It was a modest tap, but the hand behind it belonged to a man who had practiced making profound things sound small. "Enter," she said, without turning. Qyburn glided through the doorway like a letter sliding under a door. He bowed, but it was more of an inclination, as if he did not wish to disturb the air. He wore that same nondescript robe he affected when he wished to be no one's particular enemy, no one's particular friend. His hair was neatly cut, not in a maester's fringe but abbreviated as if convenience were piety. In his hands he carried nothing. His news did not require props. "My lady," he said, always that, "my lady," when he could not speak the other, "my queen," and always plainly, without apology for the loss. "You woke early." The boy at the brazier said you did not ring. "I slept," she answered, "and then I woke." She turned from the window and let her gaze rest lightly on him. "You have something to bring." "A list of things," he said, smiling with his lips and not with his eyes. "The high hand has sent note to say he will attend. The old maester requires a chair, which he has already instructed his lackey to place in the shade of some pillar he prefers. The Tyrells are to come up from the gate of the gods with as much green as they can wear, and with flowers at their horses' ears, which will be a trial for the horses. The Faith, for their part, have posted brothers along the Street of Sisters and the Street of Steel. They carry no blades, but they carry cudgels, and the cudgel has its own argument. Sir Robert stands ready, and the guards below report no sign of disturbance at any of the posterns. The bells will ring at prime. He could have said, and if they do not ring, it will still be because someone pulls the rope. Qyburn never said anything he did not mean, but he liked to place the truth where it could be taken for ornament. "And Tommen?" she asked, careful to keep the ordinary note in her voice. "His Grace will attend," Qyburn said. "He sent word late last night. It is not a long note. The hand is his own." She imagined her son with his lip under his teeth, trying to keep the letters straight. "And does our little bird still sing for us inside that nest?" she asked. Qyburn cocked his head slightly, like a bird himself. "It sings when we ask. I told it only to listen today." "You will leave the listening to others," she said. "Today is for the eyes." "Ah," Qyburn murmured. "Then I shall make a new list." He made as if to depart. "Wait," she said. "You will accompany me." Qyburn did not let surprise show. "If that is your wish." She went to the chest where the garments lay. There had been a time when she would command the whole court with the blaze of citron silk, with brocade ripe as fruit. Today she laid her hand on black, not morning black but a black with sheen, like the slick of oil on wa. Tur. The gown was cut without the softness of pleats, without the usual soldiering of metalwork across bust and sleeves. It was a blade disguised as cloth. She stood while the laces were tightened and the hem settled, and only then did she pick up the piece that would be her armor, the collar. It was a circlet of hammered metal set with dark glass that could be taken for jet. It did not flash. It gathered light and kept it. "Do not dress me as if it were a funeral," she had told the seamstresses the day before. She had not told them whose. When she was ready, she sent for the mountain. He came. He always came when she called, and filled the doorway. His helm, with its long, expressionless visor, was a blank that dared the world to project upon it. Men who did not know better mistook that blankness for stupidity. Cersei had learned to see in its unyielding nothing the violence it promised. He smelled faintly of oiled metal and cold sweat. She put a hand, just once, on his gauntlet forearm and felt in the metal the thud of his pulse as if the suit itself had veins. It comforted her as a furnace comforts a house in winter. They left the chamber without ceremony. No maid brought a mantle to tuck about her shoulders. No herald went before. The corridors of the Red Keep were less empty than they wished to be. Servants slid out of sight into niches and behind hangings as she approached, not from fear alone. There was curiosity in the movement, the twitch of the cat when a bird crosses the courtyard. Cersei walked as she had been taught to walk in her father's house. Not fast, but with the kind of steady gait that implies motion is entirely your own choice. Qyburn walked to her left, his hands tucked in his sleeves like a petitioner's. The mountain came behind and made a barrier of himself for any who might forget how to keep distance. Their footsteps sounded in a way that was almost theatrical, the stone offering back to them the double report, walkers and echoers. When they came to the great hall, empty and too full at once, Cersei gave the throne a glance that cost her nothing. It sat where it always sat, a humorless joke in iron. There was ash in the hearths from last night's embers. A page stood sentry at the far door, the boy's knees locked, his mouth gone pale around its edges. She remembered a time when a page in this hall might faint from the heat of summer and no one would mark it. On the steps down to the yard, a woman knelt to whisper something, then crossed herself so fast she bruised her own breast. There was the smell of clean straw and horse leather and last night's urine washing away under a bucket. The light had sharpened. The Red Keep was made for sharpness of light. It liked to show every corner of itself. The yard was busier than it ought to be, but no one made themselves obstacle to Cersei Lannister this morning. She could feel the way people tilted, without moving, as she passed, the way a field of grass lays down before a heavy foot. In the stables, a mare nickered, then stamped. The horses wore green cloth today, and the green was not hers. She let her eyes rest on it only a moment. The Tyrells put leaves on everything. It made them think they were more than they were. She did not speak, but Qyburn read the tilt of her head and gave one of his small smiles. They had become adept at conversing without using the cargo of words. The carriage they had prepared for her was unadorned, as she had required. She would not be hidden today. She would not be paraded either. She stepped into it and sat so that the window would frame her when the streets narrowed and people leaned from windows and stoops to watch. Qyburn entered and sat across, folding himself with a convenience that made him seem boneless. The mountain could not fit. He would walk. He liked walking. He liked making space. As they rolled out, Cersei turned her face not outward first, but inward. She let her thought move to Tommen. She saw him as a smaller boy, feet too short to reach the floor from a high chair, swinging in the air as if he might set the whole keep in motion if he found the right rhythm. She remembered him asleep, his lashes faint on his cheek, and she remembered him at table, picking with concentration at a pomegranate as if he were solving a siege. He had let other people move him, lately. Marjorie had learned how to press the button in him that made him open his mouth and speak in a voice that was not entirely his. The Faith had learned a different button. Children were machines that people thought were gardens. She became aware then of the street coming up around the wheels, of how the sound changed from the scrape of iron on stone to a more muffled percussion when they crossed a place where straw had been thrown to keep the dust down. The city narrowed and then widened again, windows creeping closer and elbows of stone shouldering them back. The windows had people in them, and those people had faces, and those faces made their calculations and looked, and some made the old hand sign on their chests, the one that was supposed to keep bad luck out. She caught an old woman's expression and recognized something that was not exactly hatred. It was appetite, as if the old woman were going to eat this day like a cake and would lick her fingers after. She remembered her own walk, the one they had made her take, and for a breath the carriage walls seemed to close in about her with an odor of cabbage water and vinegar and all those hands reaching. She pinched that memory out at its wick. Today would be different. Today she would not offer her head for anyone's palming. On the other side of the city, not far by measure of streets but far by measure of worlds, a young queen stood while her women adjusted her sleeves. Marjorie Tyrell did not stand still because she had to, but because stillness made the women more deft. She had learned that the body is a map and the people who dress you know the roads. The gown she had chosen was green, but not spring green. There was a depth to it, the green of the water where the weeds go and eels hide. The neck was cut to show a suggestion and a promise. Marjorie understood the economy of the suggestion better than any girl the city had seen in 20 years, and the cloth had been watered so the light found movement in it even when she stood motionless. A young maid fussed with her hair. Marjorie did not look at herself. She looked at the little habits of the maid's fingers instead, how they smoothed the same curl twice when once would have done. The nervousness of the servant was a weather vane for the world outside. Is it too much? Her grandmother had asked yesterday, touching the hem with a disdain that had nothing to do with the dress. Olenna had left at dawn 2 days ago. Olenna had decided, that her presence would make the day feel like a performance. And it was true that the city liked its plays best when the players did not appear to know they were upon a stage. Marjorie had disagreed only within herself. There were days when a play needed a playwright present in the pit, ready to throw a cabbage if an actor forgot his lines. Not too much, Marjorie had said then, and she said it again now, not aloud, but to the mirror. Too much was an illusion other people chose. She would not choose it. She let them lace and smooth and pin, and then she drew a breath and felt the dress move with her. She smiled the smile that made people like her, the one that suggested she was already halfway to liking them. "Where is my brother?" she asked the room. She asked it as if the answer did not matter, and it mattered as much as breath. "In the hall," said one of the women, "with the Septon. They talk softly." Softly was not her brother's manner. Loras had once thrown his laugh like a knuckleball, letting it skip along the tables of the banqueting hall, making people reach to catch it. He had become quieter the past months, and not in the way a man becomes quiet when he grows wise. There had been too much quiet forced upon him. That kind of quiet clogged the mouth and made the words behind it want to rush out too fast. Marjorie had told him, "You will speak exactly what is needed and nothing more." He had looked at her like a boy on a winter field, breathing steam, waiting for the umpire to drop a handkerchief. "I'll go to him," she said. "No, leave that grapnel curl as it is," she added to the maid. "It will look as though you forgot to perfect me, which will endear me to people who fear perfection. There, you see, that strand will be the one I play with when I pretend I am nervous." The maid blushed as if she had been awarded a sin. Marjorie reached and squeezed the girl's hand, small and dry and cold. "You do well. You must eat breakfast," she said. because kindness given at random binds people up better than any appointment. She found her brother where they had said, in a chamber where the light fell in apportionments upon the flagstones, making each irregular square a stage of its own. Loras sat not on a chair but on the edge of a window seat, as if ready to rise and move. He could never be comfortable anymore, not in his body or out of it. The Septon by him was a narrow reed of a man, with lips that pressed together as if he was forever putting out a lamp with a pinch of his fingers. He looked at Marjorie with the look of a man who does not care to be made to feel anything. She poured a bowl of water for herself and drank and did not offer him any. His kind did not accept gifts they had not requested. It would be an offense to his idea of himself if she forgave him his piety. "Leave us," she told the reed. He hesitated long enough for her to decide whether to remind him he was a reed. She said nothing. He went. Loras's hands were clasped so hard his knuckles looked like the little white shells that children find and throw back into the water because they taste of chalk. She put her hands over his and felt his pulse, fast and reptile-soft. "They will want you to tell them a story," she said. "Men who have decided upon a judgment are never so happy as when they find a way to make the judged say the judgment aloud. They will hope to see in your face the joy of agreeing to be guilty. They will hope to see relief." "I can give them relief," Loras said. The voice was small but not weak. "I can relieve them of their need to witness anything." "And you call me proud," she said, but she said it with a smile. "No, sweeting. You will do as we laid out. You will confess to what costs us least. You will confess to the bed you had and not to those you did not. You will let them cut your flowers off and stick you in brown cloth for a time. You will do it cheerfully, so that people will say, 'Do you see? Even the beautiful are humble. Even the flower bows to the shears and does not curse the gardener.' They might," he said, "carve a 7-pointed star into my forehead." He touched the place with 2 fingers, then checked himself and put his hands back under hers like a child reminded not to worry a scab. "They might," she said, "and if they do, they think it will mark you for shame. It will not. It will mark you for story." "I do not wish to be a story," he said. "No one does," she said, "until they are one." He looked at her then with some old brightness in him, and she saw him as she had when he had been a boy and had brought her a snake he had found in a hedge, presenting it as if it were a piece of silk. She had not flinched. She had taken it in her hands and fed it a drop of milk. She had always known how to wear fear like a veil you could see through. "The king will attend," she said. "I think he must. He cannot send the crown's proxy to see his mother tried. He is a good boy, and good boys always believe in this moment where truth will be a piece of fruit they can lift to their lips and bite. It is our duty to show him how to hold the fruit and not bruise it." Loras managed to smile. "You will talk to him," he said, not as a question. "I will look at him and I will make him wish to be the kind of man worthy of that look," Marjorie said. "It is the only language he takes to heart." "Do you ever tire of it?" he asked. "Of making men? Every day," she said. "And then I wake and find there are still men." When she left him, she let her hand slide along the stone of the corridor. Warm already. Summer found its way into stone faster than winter did. The palace servants flowed around her, not daring to brush her sleeve and also not willing to be far from the wake of her. She could feel in the air the way the day was going to make itself important. It was not an ordinary feeling. It had fewer edges. It was a pressure, as if the city had been set to bake and the cook had closed the oven door on a pan that might rise too fast. In a cell that had not been a cell until the faith decided to name it one. An old maester leaned his weight against the table and folded his hands to keep them from trembling. Pycelle had combed his beard carefully this morning. It remained an unruly standard, and a hair caught in the corner of his mouth despite his fussing. He was tired, and the cost of the fatigue was in his patience. He would never confess that to the Qyburn creature, who had robbed him of so many things, but to himself he conceded that he had become thin and long like a shadow cast by a man who had already stepped out of the sun. He had been asked to testify, not by the Queen mind. The Queen had no use for men who remembered her when she could not bend them. By the High Hand, Kevin had sent the message in his manner. No wasted words and no velvet on the box. Pycelle had not decided whether to take this as a compliment. There were compliments that are apologies with the apology stripped away. He thought of the boy king and of the queen behind him and of the child she had been under Tywin Lannister's gaze. He thought that the city had a kind of stupidity that was not the stupidity of men but of crowds. He would tell the truth, he told himself. He had begun to practice it late, as some men take up prayer when their hair is gray. The truth would not be deep. It would be a stone that did not sink far when thrown into the pond, but it would be a stone. He finished combing his beard with fingers that had touched more vials than women. He stood with care. The knees, they would be the thing that gave him away. He regretted this. A man's knees ought to be his own until he fell. Across the keep, Kevan Lannister fitted a plain seal ring onto his finger and felt the weight of it as if rings could weigh more on such days. He had never liked the throne, not for himself, not for his brother, not for that boy with the hair like spun sunshine and the eyes that had not learned what they must see. But liking is different than duty. He would attend. He would ensure the king attended appropriately, and he would loose the words he had prepared when the time came, measured so that they would land softly and still sink. He shaved while looking at his own mouth in a bit of slightly clouded glass and found himself thinking of his brother's mouth. How Tywin had drawn it tight over his teeth when he did not mean to smile. The resemblance to his brother in the mirror disturbed him less than it had at first. A man grew comfortable with the face that betrayed him every morning. "Uncle," came a small voice behind the door, not knocking, only the soft announcement of the king's page. "His Grace asks if you will break your fast with him." "Tell His Grace," Kevan said, flicking the razor against the bowl with an economy that satisfied him, "that I shall be with him at once." The boy's feet hurried away. Kevan dried his face with a towel and regarded himself for the beat of 3 heart thumps. There is a face that men bring to festivals and a face that men bring to funerals. Today required the face of a bookkeeper. He could do that. Tommen, in his chamber, had pushed the plate of bread and honey away and was trying not to look as if he had pushed it away because he was sick. He did not want to be sick today. He had been sick once when he was 5, and the way his mother had taken him up in her arms, swearing at the floor for tripping him and the air for filling his lungs, had made him think that sickness could be a good thing, like a secret door that let you go into a hidden room with cushions. He understood better now, but the understanding did not prevent the body from its habits. His hands made fists, then opened out as if he were squeezing something and then releasing it. And when his uncle entered, he sat on them to keep them from telling on him. "You did not eat?" Kevan said, as if that were the same as good morning. "I had tea," Tommen said. His voice wanted to crack and refused, or refused and wanted to crack. He could not tell any longer. He had grown taller suddenly this last slice of year, and his legs did not know what to do with the new length. They went out in front of him like 2 dogs that disliked their leashes. "We will go presently," Kevan said. "You will be seen walking. You will be seen sitting. You will be seen listening. If you are asked to speak, you will say as we rehearsed, that justice is no more than the crown doing what the crown must always do. Listen to the realm's laws as to a song everyone knows the words to. Do you remember?" "I remember," said Tommen. He wished he did not remember the look on his mother's face when he had to speak the decree that took away the trial by combat. He had told himself that perhaps the right thing to do would be the thing that hurt everyone and made him feel like he had done wrong. It had been a theory. It had felt brave inside his head. He suspected now that bravery was often just this: doing the thing and feeling awful and having to watch other people look at you the way animals look at see each other when one of them stumbles. "You will be protected," Kevan said. The boy flicked his eyes to the window and back, like a bird checking the sky. Protected had become a word that meant many contradictory things. It meant there would be men between you and other men, and also that there would be men between you and yourself. "How is Mother?" Tommen asked, careful to make it sound like idle concern. "I have not seen her yet." "She is..." Kevan began and then stopped. It occurred to him that the truth served better. "She is as she must be. She will not be less." Tommen nodded, as if he had received the answer he had expected. He threaded his fingers, then untied them. "I will go," he said. "I will sit where I am told. I will listen." "You will be a king," Kevan said. "Yes," Tommen said. He had learned that yes was sometimes less a word than a piece of would use to prop a door open. The procession gathered itself as processions do, which is to say not all at once, but in shivers. The streets around the hill of Baelor began to shake off the ordinary business of selling onions and scrubbing stoops and turned toward the business of gathering. The September's white steps had been washed in the gray hour, and the man who had done the washing stood with his bucket and regarded his own work as if the marble might thank him. Sisters in gray moved in a fish shoal down the steps and back up them, carrying baskets with bread for alms and bread for strength, and not confusing the baskets as often as one might think. Word came up from the gate that the Tyrells had crossed through. Their horses were small for war but large for show, their manes braided with ribbon and vine and the small golden roses that someone had cut from beaten foil. The Tyrell standard rippled with goodwill and calculation. People craned their necks from windows and put their children on their shoulders and said, "Now there is a house for you. See how they are not ashamed to be beautiful. See how they do not fear a bow because they believe they bow at their pleasure." Marjorie rode not on a palfrey, not on some mare small enough to make her look fragile, but on a horse that would have looked right at home under a night. She sat it like a man and like a woman both, with her shoulders loose and her head up. Loras rode near her, but the Faith had contrived to clothe him plain and in so doing had made him only more noticeable. A beauty in brown is still a beauty. Some of the crowd clapped, some murmured prayers that sounded like curses because they were prayers for someone else's mercy. The bells began then. First the little ones in the south transept that chattered like gossiping girls. Then the deep bell that was the September's heart. The sound rolled down the hill and made the dogs bark. It went over the roofs and down into the river and along it, making the water tremble as if it were a string plucked by a large hand. In the Red Keep, Cersei's carriage paused to let a blind man cross before it with his stick tapping. In the carriage, she closed her eyes for one breath. The bells had rung for birth, for marriage, for victory, for plague. They had rung for her walk. They had rung when they were made to ring. Bells do not ring for themselves. They came into the square before the September, and the square had been made to receive their coming. Troopers lined the edges, wearing the colors of the crown and of Highgarden both. The Faith's brothers stood in their rows, their faces set and pale with the satisfaction that comes from suffering done carefully. The steps rose with an implacable whiteness. Through the crowd a lane had been left, and through that lane the carriage rolled. Cersei stepped down with Qyburn's hand not offered and the mountain's presence offered too obviously to refuse. She could feel the eyes on her and made a part of her mind look out through those eyes, see herself as they saw, tall enough, dressed in winter and summer, mouth closed upon its own ripeness. She began to climb the steps and her foot did not slip. There was a time when she would have rehearsed this climb in her rooms, measured the length of it with steps, counted her breaths against it. She had not done so. She did not intend to grant the steps the honor of forethought. The doors to the September, high and old and carved with saints who had faces like weather and knew nothing of men, stood open. The air inside came out to meet her, cooler, touched with incense and with the flowers the Tyrells insisted upon leaving at every figure's stone feet. The light inside was different. The September had its own light held like a bowl in high hands. She went in. The great September of Baelor had always been too much. It wanted to overwhelm even the men who built it. Its dome sailed over the world like a sea, and the pillars that held it were the trunks of an impossible forest made of marble and pride. The floor was a chessboard of stone in colors that had been argued over by kings. It smelled of wax. It smelled of metal. It smelled of the breath of hundreds of people who had come here to enact their idea of holiness and had brought their animal lives with them in their skin and their hair. Sound behaved strangely here. It went up and found places to stick, then fell down in flakes of echo. The Faith militant had arranged themselves in the nave, facing one another across the space like two walls built to see which would fall first. The High Sparrow sat on a seat that was not a throne. He had a talent for finding the exact chair to sit upon that would disarm men and disquiet them at the same time. It was plain wood with a cushion that had seen better palms. His robe was clean, but it was the sort of clean that looks as if it might be dirted by the mere fact of having to be in the world. His hands were his most eloquent part. He held them folded, and even the folding was a sermon. When he lifted his eyes to Cersei Lannister, he lifted them without any of the theatrics. Sir men adopted when they wished to be thought fearless. He simply looked. It was intolerable. Marjorie, already inside with the others of the court, did not turn her head quickly. She turned it as if it were something she had learned to do in a school where girls are taught to make men think they invented their glances. She and Cersei exchanged the kind of look women use when they stand on either side of the path where men walk into their judgments. It was a look that cannot be transcribed. It was a look that said, "We will remain when these others have gone to bone." The king's arrival shivered the air in a different way. Tommen entered between two of his guards, and the crowd gave the astonished sigh it always gave at the sight of a boy wearing a crown. Boys are for games and sugar. A crown on a boy asks too much of the eye. He came up the aisle and did the small nod he had practiced. He looked, as he had been told to look, at the saints behind the High Sparrow and at the floor before him and at no one else. He lifted his eyes only once to the pew where his mother sat, and when he did, Cersei did not smile, did not incline her head, did not attempt to catch his glance and hold it. She let him feel the weight of her simply being there. The trial, if that is what it was, though the word has a courtroom smell to it, began with little things. Paper unfolded. Names said, men making their way to positions as if the positions were places they had always meant to stand upon. The Tyrell entourage found seats that allowed them to be watched while pretending to be entirely occupied with watching others. Kevin took his place and arranged his hands so they would not fidget. Qyburn slid to the rear where shadows made room for him. The mountain stood. He did that well. The High Sparrow spoke. His voice was not large. He did not try to drown the dome with it. He spoke as a man speaks when he is accustomed to having people lean in. The words were not new. Sin, mercy, law, repentance, the king under the seven and not above them, the queen under the seven and not above them. The idea that all men are equal in the face of the law until the law is done with them. He had a way of speaking that made the sentence just long enough to tempt interruption, and he used it like a craftsman, letting men's mouths open and then closing the sentence with a small twist that made the interruption seem foolish. He had the town for an audience and the town liked him. He had made himself their mirror. Cersei listened, and she did not let her face say any of the things her mind said. They brought Loras up first. He came without rope, and the absence of rope became a kind of rope. He stood near the dais and kept his chin level. The cut on his lip where he had bitten it 2 days ago when the door slammed on his fingers had scabbed. It gave him a negligent cruelty at the mouth. People saw what they wanted. The High Sparrow asked the small questions first. Are you Ser Loras of House Tyrell? Do you love the Seven? Do you love the truth? And then he asked the truth to come up and stand beside the boy like a friend. Loras did as he had rehearsed. He confessed to the bed everyone knew about, or thought they knew. He did not confess to those that had never existed except in the imagination men feed with other men's lives. He lifted his eyes to the High Sparrow and said, I have been proud. I have been intemperate. I have been unmanly. And he said the last word with a lightness that made it unclear whether he despised it or offered it up as an altar. He did not look at Marjorie. He did not look where the king sat. He did not look in the direction of his mother's absence, which was the absence around which the air moved. And so, said the High Sparrow, what will you do? He had a way of asking permission for what he planned to take. He offered Loras the small thing, a life remade, sewn into the cloth of the faith. Loras looked into that brown cloth with its plain stitches and saw his life like a thread in it. He nodded. He said yes. He laid his sword on the altar, and in that act they took more from him than a sword. Marjorie watched and let no line of her face move. She would not gasp when the star was cut into her brother's forehead if they chose to cut it. And because she did not, because she sat with her hands folded, soft hands with no work in them, there were those in the gallery who found in their mouths a secret, admiring taste for steel. They did not cut him then. That would come later, after they had drunk more of the day. The High Sparrow made of Loras's confession a little sermon, the way a child makes a tower of the blocks he is given, then knocked the tower down himself and smiled to show he had meant it from the beginning. He used Loras's yes as a hinge to open the next door. They brought Cersei forward. She did not bow. She did not curtsy. She stood on her feet and turned to face the man who wore humility like a weapon. and for a heartbeat it was as quiet as a field under frost. The High Sparrow asked the same little questions. "Are you Cersei of House Lannister, widowed queen, mother, daughter?" And she answered each with the kind of plain voice that suggests this day bores me. He moved to larger things. She had confessed already. In part, she had done the walk. She had stripped before the city and been pelted with sweat and spittle and flowers that had not been meant as honor. The High Sparrow wanted now the rest, and the rest would be the part that killed the part of the city that wanted to keep her a monster. The city loves its monsters. It never knows what to do when a monster refuses its lines. "Your Grace," he said, an odd honorific from his mouth, clipped, as if afraid of rotting his teeth with it. "You have said already that you lay with a man who was not your husband." "I did," she said. She did not look at Lancel. He was there in his brown with his pale hair grown long and rough, and he did not look at her either. They made a courtesy of not looking. "Would you say," the High Sparrow continued, mild as a butter knife, "that you did so under duress? That you were made to feel the hand of a lord upon you in ways a lord ought not lay it?" Cersei let a tiny silence open between them, like an orange peel. "I would say," she answered, "that there are few things a woman does that she does not consider and choose in some measure, even when she has been taught that she must not consider, even when she has been told that she does not choose." It was not the answer he wanted, and it was not the answer that would soften the hearts of those who wanted a melodrama. It was, however, the truth she would permit. A woman who knows she is being judged is never required to help the judge. The High Sparrow tilted his head as if a sparrow truly listened from a branch. "There remain, then, two charges that neither the crown nor the faith can find comfort in ignoring," he said. "There is the charge of conspiring to the king's death. Robert's name he did not say. Names had power, and Robert's name called up a history the High Sparrow did not want to share with his audience of fishwives and thieves. And there is the charge of unnatural commerce, of lying with your brother, and of bringing forth children of such union to sit upon the throne." A stir ran through the place like wind through wheat. That charge was the oldest story in the city by now, and the city loved to hear it told again. Tommen held himself very still. He thought if he did not move, no arrow could find him. Behind Cersei's left shoulder, Qyburn had the look of a man whose experiment had begun to produce smoke but not yet flame. Cersei kept her eyes upon the High Sparrow, and the High Sparrow kept his upon her. And between their eyes a third city was built, a city of invisible walls and invisible armies. "You will bring your witnesses," she said for him, so that he would know she did not need a ringmaster for this performance. "We will bring what the seven have seen," he said, and then he began. Lancel came. Lancel's voice tried to be steady and succeeded only as far as a voice can when it has to travel over dry river beds. He spoke of a queen who had asked him for the little help a cousin gives, for the wine that would soften a king's temper on a hunt. He spoke of things whispered when the torches had dwindled. He did not say the word poison. He did not have to. The city heard it anyway and laid it upon her like a cloak. He did not look at Cersei, and she did not look at him, and in that refusal to look they had perhaps their last act of kinship. They called a kitchen servant who had once been 12 and was now 16 and wore the years like a badly sewn hem. She had seen a teakettle left too long near the hearth, and had seen a vial emptied into it, and had known nothing then, and knew everything now, because the faith had told her afterward what she had seen. The city hummed. It liked the little ones. They made pain into something palatable. They called a scribe who had kept a ledger and recorded when the king's hunts were planned and when they were delayed and what barrels of wine had been taken and by whom. The ledger, like all ledgers, told its story without drama and was therefore the most damning witness of the morning. It offered dates. It offered small sums of coin that had gone missing and appeared again in other columns. It offered not a motive but a pattern, and men who do not believe in sin will believe in patterns. And then, when that stone had been thrown in, they made the bigger splash, calling upon the matter of the children, Cersei's children, born with their father's blonde upon them and a set to their mouths that the city knew better than it wanted to know. They had a letter in a girl's hand, a letter that had been meant for no one and for someone. The sum of a girl's fear when she had discovered that she was to be used in a bed by a boy who already belonged to someone else. and the letter had been found in a box in a house where the faith had gone to collect this, and that once the city gave them the right, said enough. And still Cersei did not look. She stood and let the day climb her like ivy. Twice she saw the edge of the world grow white, and twice she let the whiteness wash out and memory return. She kept herself with the memory of 3 heads leaning together over a chessboard. Joff's impatience, Myrcella's careful finger tapping the piece she wanted, Tommen's habit of asking the piece's permission before moving it. She did not let the story the faith told erase her own. When it was her turn to speak, she spoke very little. She said words that could be repeated afterward without much alteration. Words that did not admit paraphrase. Words that would not gratify the scribes listening with their ink at the ready. She did not deny what she could not deny. Lancel was a fact, and facts are not undone by outrage. She denied with a calm that offended that she had conspired to kill the king, and in denying it she made of the king's death what it had always been. A drunken man in the woods with a boar and a spear. She denied that her children were bastards, and when she spoke of her children she did it with the kind of coolness that makes some men see ice and others see the line of a blade. She did not plead. She did not weep. She did not remind anyone that the city had seen her naked. She did not remind anyone that they had all, each in their way, looked upon her and found their own faces in the mirror of her. Outside, the day wheeled. The sun found the dome and made of it a great, pale eye. Horses stamped and tossed their bits in flecks of foam. Bakers kept baking because their trade is to transform dough into sustenance no matter whose neck is being measured for a noose. In the alleys, boys ran errands that were messages, and girls poured water over steps that had collected dust from dusty shoes. The city would not wait for its own drama to be concluded. It would continue eating, shitting, gossiping, loving, stealing. The city survived because it forgot itself between each breath. Inside, something changed that had nothing to do with words. It was not the law turning like a gear. It was more subtle, the way a spiderweb vibrates when a fly touches it. Marjorie felt it first because she had made a profession of feeling such changes before anyone else. It was the crowd, the people who had come to watch and to be fed by watching. Their hunger had shifted. They had expected a feast and found themselves in the presence of a fast. The High Sparrow had allowed no spectacle beyond the necessary. The Queen had given them nothing except the possibility of being disappointed by their own cruelty. And disappointment has a smell. Marjorie took this in and made the smallest movement with her head that would allow a person watching her, say a boy with a crown, to see that she was serene and to feel a need to take his cue from her serenity. She had not planned to speak this morning. It did not matter. Plans are for carpenters. Queens work with weather. When the High Sparrow paused, as even he must, she let the breathing space become a room and stood. The movement sent a small rustle down the pews. She moved not toward the High Sparrow but toward the space between him and the Queen, because that space was the map on which the city's future would be drawn. Holiness, she said, using the word without irony. Irony is best kept under glass. If taken out, it rusts. If it please you, and if it please the court, a wife of the king would speak. Tommen startled. He had forgotten to expect his wife to be an actor. He had thought of her as the one who waited behind the curtains with a smile to give him. He found himself standing too, as if pulled up by a string tied to her wrist. He did not speak. He looked at the High Sparrow as if waiting for a verdict as to whether his wife existed. The High Sparrow inclined his head. He could not deny her without appearing ungenerous. He could not invite her without appearing to have invited the wrong kind of woman into the right kind of place. He gestured with 2 fingers, a small benediction. The floor, we are told, is yours. Marjorie did not go far. She did not mount steps. She did not look as if she remembered what her mother had told her about not standing above men in their own house. She spoke without moving her hands. She had learned long ago that people will put the movements on your hands themselves if you do not. I have listened, she said. Like the rest, I have listened, and we have heard what we expected to hear and what we did not. The faith has shown us how it hears truth. The crown, she nodded slightly toward Tommen, and in doing so gave him a gift he did not know how to unwrap, has shown us how it will be guided by truth. I would say, if I may, one thing that is not law and not sermon. She allowed herself to look then at Cersei. She did not look as one looks at an enemy across a field. She looked the way a woman looks at another woman across a table where bread sits and a knife. "I have known the queen as a queen and as a mother," she said. "There is little more dangerous in the world than a mother and little more instructive. We are not called to judge the heart. That is the Seven's occupation. We are called to judge the act. If the queen has sinned in bed or in council, the faith will say so. The crown will be bound to answer. But if we make of this day a story whose only purpose is to love our hatred, then we will be no better than men who cheer at a bear baiting and discover, when the bear has been killed, that the killing did not cure them of their itch. We must choose what we want this city to be taught." She did not think the High Sparrow would forgive the word choice, the suggestion that he taught the city with pleasure. He did not forgive it. His mouth made the small purse that means a man is about to be forced to exhibit patience. Marjorie did not wait for his reply. She did not intend to argue. She intended to place in the mouths of the listeners a taste they would not forget. She turned then and made a slight bow to the king, and in doing so showed him the trust she hoped would become a habit in him. She returned to her seat without asking permission. The High Sparrow cleared his throat. It was a small sound. It came down from the dome in a way that gave it a grandeur he had not put there, and he enjoyed it against his will. He returned to his work without scolding queens. That would come later, in the small room where scolding might not seem like scolding because there was bread on the table and a jug of water. For now, he brought them back to what they had come to see. Judgment negotiating with itself in public. Kevin watched this little playlet and told himself a story about tides. He had been born far inland. He had seen tides only once as a young man, and they had not impressed him then. He had not understood how people could build their lives around water that comes and goes of its own mind. Now he understood. He could feel inside himself the coming and going, the pull of forces that no single man or woman set in motion. He glanced at Pycelle, and Pycelle's eyes were closed, as if the old man had decided to take a nap in the middle of a forest fire. Qyburn, behind the pillar, had not moved. The mountain had. It was not a movement like a man's. It was a recalibration, the way a statue puts itself in order when the light changes. A brother of the faith had shifted closer, the better to maintain the line between the queen and any who would come near her uninvited. The mountain had made a space with his body where none had been, and the brother had found himself stepping back without quite knowing why, as a horse steps back when it feels the heat of a brand. The High Sparrow, seeing the way the lines of men adjust themselves, smiled a secret smile and covered it with a cough. He called then for a witness that surprised some and confirmed for others the pleasure of being surprised. A girl who had once belonged to the queen's household and had been sent away for breaking a vase that had, in fact, broken itself. Her name was Talia or Tala or Taya, a name that would bear any version of itself because no one had cared to keep it straight. She had, like all such, a memory full of other people's small embarrassments. She told the court about a night when the queen had waited in a certain corridor for a certain man, and how the queen had worn a cloak over her hair and had smelled of oranges because she had bathed, and how she, the girl, had been told to go back down the stairs and had gone and had waited and had never seen the man come out but had heard him, and how his voice had been low and roughened by laughter. She said nothing that could hang a woman. She said things that could hang a reputation. The city loved those best. Cersei, for her part, let the day go on. She had wondered whether there would be a moment when something inside would shatter and the shards would cut her open and the blood would pour onto the floor and she would have to step through it barefoot. The moment did not come. Something else came instead. A sense of balance, of standing at the center of a wheel and feeling the spokes turn but not be moved yourself. She had wanted fire. She had thought of it, planned it, savored the idea of it. She had imagined the September dome flowering in green and the city learning at last what it was to fear her. Now that the bells had rung and the doors had opened and the vault had not become a kiln, she realized that some part of her had wanted this as well, to stand and be seen and not break. By mid-morning, the air inside had warmed with so many breaths. The candle flames made small cones of exhaustion. Someone fainted and was carried out. It was a woman with a string of wooden beads wrapped twice around her wrist. The trial in its afternoon half turned to the matter of law. The High Sparrow quoted from old books that some men present had never seen but had dreamed of seeing. A scribe read out the passages in a voice that sounded like a ladder missing a rung. The law, like water, can be made to fit many vessels. The faith poured it today into a cup that, while plain, had a lip that would cut. There came a point when even men who loved speeches understood that words had reached their own saturation. The High Sparrow folded his hands, unfolded them, then folded them again, as if deciding which configuration would prove more merciful. He looked to the king. Tommen had learned how to make his face into a plate with nothing upon it. He had also learned that the world would put whatever it wished on that plate, and that he would have to eat it in front of everyone. His Grace, said the High Sparrow, has listened. It is fitting now that we retire to consider. The faith will consult the seven as best we know. We ask the crown to consult its own conscience. There would be no verdict at once. Of course there would not. The city would have to be made to come back again for its second course. People stood as if unsure whether they were permitted to stand. The air nodded. The hum of talk rose. Marjorie did not go at once to her husband. It would have been expected, and the expected is a garment that needs to be mended by the unexpected if it is to be worn well. She made instead for the queen. The space between them had to be traversed properly, not as if one woman were crossing into the other's pasture, not as if parley had been arranged. She walked as if she had discovered herself, by chance, to be headed in that direction. "Your Grace," she said softly when she stood as close as courtesy allowed. Cersei regarded her for a beat. She did not like to look up at anyone. She lifted her chin instead. "Your Grace," she returned, not bothering to sand the edge off the word. Their two graces hovered between them like a dragonfly, flashing, fragile. "It was well born," Marjorie said, and in the way she said it there was no hint that it was a consolation. It was a fact. They would have preferred a scene. "They prefer it always," Cersei said. "The city is a throat. It likes the feeling of swallowing." "They will have to content themselves with bread until supper," said Marjorie, glancing to where the alms baskets were being emptied and refilled. "And supper may prove thin." "Your brother," Cersei said, and let the blank after hang. "Will live," Marjorie said, "and that will be the thing that makes it worst for them. Men who desire justice as a spectacle do not admire lives being lived afterward." "Your grandmother has taught you to make aphorisms," Cersei said, and Marjorie smiled, not quite with amusement. "My grandmother has taught me that if you say a thing in a sentence that is easy to carry, people will carry it with them. I have had to make the sentences easy because I ask men to carry more than they like." "Do you ask your husband much?" Cersei asked, letting silk into the question and a pin hidden in the silk. Marjorie met her gaze directly and let her voice be as soft as a shared secret. "I ask him only what he can give," she said. "He is not hard to please. He wants only to know that when he wakes there will be bread, and that at noon no man will be dragged by his hair down a street, and that at vesper the bells will be rung by a hand that is not shaking. He wants to be good. Few kings have wanted that, and fewer have survived it." "They never do," Cersei said. Her mouth moved in the ghost of a smile. "Goodness is a bit in the mouth. Someone holds it. And yet sometimes the horse walks away without being held," Marjorie said, glancing toward the king now. Kevin had him by the elbow with a particular gravity, like a man helping a child down from a high stool. "We shall see what creature his Grace becomes. Do not call me Your Grace again," Cersei said suddenly, low enough that only Marjorie would hear. "Do not call me anything when we are in a room full of men who are listening for names to hang upon women. If you must speak to me, do it with your eyes and not your mouth." Marjorie's face did not change. If anything, she seemed to become more charming, because charm is the best mask for rage. "I will send you from my eyes this," she said, "which is the truth. I would rather hold our city together with you than pull it apart without you. But I will do it either way. I am a woman. I have learned to weave with whatever thread is in my basket." Cersei felt, against her will, a small warmth. It was not affection. She had given up affection like a girl gives up dolls when she is given a dagger, but recognition. "If they cut your brother's brow," she said, "I will admire you for not flinching. I will admire you more for flinching and not showing it. I have never admired you for not showing it, Marjorie said. I admire you for the steel that makes showing unnecessary. It was a conversation without future. It was sufficient to itself, and that sufficiency itself was a kind of power. They stepped back from each other the inches required by the people who had been pretending not to watch. The crowd's talk filled the space like water returning to a tub when a hand is taken out. From the shadow near the pillar, Qyburn watched them and filed away the shape of that exchange in the precise way he filed away the outlines of a skull before cutting it. He saw in it the lines of alliance and the lines of fracture. He could work with both. He had in the days before made certain arrangements that did not require fire. No plan had only one wick. The little birds, in their nests, had been instructed to keep their bright black eyes open and their little sharp beaks shut. He had promised them sweets. He could keep his promises better when the city did not shake with the excitement of a calamity. He liked it this way. He would have liked the other way too. Pycelle, exhausted by the work of sitting, stood and shook out his sleeves as if they were stiff with disuse. He had been allowed not to speak today. He took this as an insult and a reprieve and could not decide which weighed more. He had rehearsed his phrases he would no doubt never be asked to utter now. It occurred to him that he had become a man who carried unspoken sentences like stones in his pockets. The crowd began to pour out of the doors like grain from a sack. The sunlight outside made their squinting faces into masks of foolishness for a moment. The sellers of sweet water found their voices. Children began to chase one another between the soldiers' legs. Some of the Faith's brothers stood with their cudgels as if they would turn them into plowshares if only someone asked nicely. Some of them held them as if a plowshare is only a cudgel waiting for a field. There were mutters, but the mutters did not yet assemble themselves into an engine. A boy shouted something obscene about queens and was slapped by his mother and then comforted by her in the same movement, as mothers do when they are themselves confused by their feelings. Tommen came to Marjorie at last and took her hand as if it were a rope thrown to him from a ship. "You spoke," he said, breathless with discovery. "I did," she said. "I said the things that needed saying." "Did they?" Tommen asked. "Need? I think so," she said. She did not tell him that need is the most elastic of words. She let him think of need as a jug that is either full or empty. It would of itself become more complicated later, and it was not her obligation to complicate him faster than the day already did. He looked at his mother then and found her gaze already upon him. He thought he saw in it something that was not disappointment. He could not name it and therefore could not keep it. He gave her the smallest nod he dared, and she did not nod back. She would not give him the relief of thinking he had done well in doing nothing. That was a relief the world would give him too often. The Tyrells began to gather, their captains whistling like men calling dogs. The Lannister men-at-arms did not whistle. They signaled with their hands, fingers opening and closing as if on invisible throats. The Faith's men would remain. The balance in the square could be felt, like a table with too many cups upon it, each filled to a different height. A gust of wind came up from the river and brought with it the smell of rotting weeds and fish and the sweetness of a barrel of apples fallen from a cart and broken open. "Holiness," said a voice at the High Sparrow's elbow. It belonged to a woman who had the look of one who has loved suffering too long to ever be rid of it. "It was well. It was," he said, "as it was. We have a duty to make it what it must be." He allowed himself a moment then, a private moment, to think of the other way the day might have gone. The hot, bright mercifulness of flame, the clean burn of it, the leveling, the lesson taught not in words but in ash. He put the thought away. Mercy came in shapes men did not expect. The city would be made to learn slowly instead. Slow is the speed of wood rotting. Slow is the speed of cloth mildewing. Slow is the speed at which men who think themselves good discover that they are only men. Cersei, at the foot of the steps now, paused. The smell of the day was different here. One could smell the sweat that had been made inside the September and was now being released as faces met the sun. She lifted her face briefly to the light and let it paint her forehead and the bridge of her nose. Qyburn stood at her shoulder, not touching, a hand behind his back, as if he kept a gift hidden there that he might produce if she asked. He had nothing in the hand. She put her foot on the first step down and felt the weight of the city's gaze upon her again. "Qyburn," she said quietly without moving her mouth much. "If the Tyrells think they have secured a victory today, let them have it." "They will," Qyburn said. "It is their way to eat the cake they are given and to tell themselves they could have baked it better. It serves us. Everything serves us," Cersei said. She did not believe it, not always. She believed it now because she needed to. She went down, and the mountain's shadow went with her like a boat chained to a dock. At the carriage, she did not at once get in. She allowed herself to be seen, not hurrying away, not fleeing. A woman spoke her name and then made as if to kneel and then did not. A man spat and then, seeing the mountain, concerned himself with a loose stone in his shoe. A child, bold in the way children are when their mother's hands are on their shoulders, pointed and asked too loudly whether queens bleed. Cersei looked at the mother and at the child and did not move a muscle of her face. She stood, being looked at, like a statue that, if it moved, would ruin the style of the street. She entered then, and as the door closed and the light within the carriage settled into its cloth softness, she let one thing happen that she had denied herself the entire morning. A breath that ended in a sound. It was not a sigh. It was not a sob. It was a kind of exhalation that acknowledged that she had been holding herself like a drawstring and that she had allowed herself slack. Qyburn, to his credit, did not speak to that sound, did not offer it a plate and ask it to sit at the table between them. He only inclined his head and said, "We will prepare for the afternoon." "There will be an afternoon," she said, to let the world know she would answer with its own weapons. "There will be many," Qyburn said, and smiled his small, tidy smile. The carriage rolled. The city, having enjoyed the morning, made itself ready to enjoy the afternoon in the manner it uses to prepare for any meal, by inventing new hungers. The gossip ran ahead of the wheels and found new corners to turn. In the shadow of a tavern porch, two men wagered on whether the queen would show her throat if asked to, and whether the Tyrell girl would bring the king to bed tonight with tenderness or with steel beneath her tongue. A boy slipped through the press with a basket of pies for sale and a knife up his sleeve. Near the river, a woman beat a rug with a stick and imagined she was beating a Septon's back. On the street of silk, a whore practiced the look she had seen the queen give, the one that did not ask for desire but made it exist, and thought she would try it on a man with money and see if it made him kinder. The Red Keep received the carriage with a lowering of spears. Cersei climbed down and did not look at the captain, who bowed too low. She walked across the yard and into the coolness where the air, even in summer, remembered winter. She did not return to her chamber. She walked to the window that looked out upon the bay. Ships scissored the water in neat lines. She placed her hands upon the stone and let the heat in it make its way into her bones. There came, after a little time, the faintest of touches at her wrist. It was a domestic touch, the kind a maid might give when asking permission to undo a fastening. Cersei did not turn her head, but she let the touch be. "Mother," said Tommen, who had come without trumpets, almost without footsteps. She had a speech to give him that would be made of iron filings and blood. She had decided not to give it. She turned and saw him standing with that uncertainty that had become him as much as his hair or his eyes. He looked as if he believed he might be in someone's way and could not decide whether to move or to stay and be in the way he had been told he was permitted to occupy. "You did as you must," she said. He blinked. It was not what he had expected. He had expected to be told he had failed in exceeding the day with his nature. He had expected to be told that kings do not sit and listen. The relief made his shoulders loosen. He hated himself a little for the relief and could not help it. "I wanted," he said and faltered. "To do the right thing," she supplied. "To do what would not." He stopped. There was no word for this thing he meant. The thing where you do an act and afterward you discover that the act has grown legs and a tongue and has walked away speaking on your behalf. "You have married a woman," she said, "who believes that goodness is a ladder." Her voice was flat. It could have been envy. It could have been a compliment. "She will hold it for you. She will tell you where to step. When you reach the top, you will not be at the top of anything. You will be on a different roof." Tommen looked down at his hands. "Do you despise me?" he asked. He asked it in the tone of a boy asking if the dog will still come when he whistles. Cersei did not move closer or farther away. "I despise," she said, "men who do not know that they are men. You are a boy who wants to know. That is more dangerous and more beautiful. It may get you killed. It may not. The world kills men who know and men who do not. It does not ask." He lifted his head. The movement had in it something like decision. "I will come back this afternoon," he said, as if she had invited him. "Yes," she said. "You will come back, and you will sit, and you will listen. And when they ask you to lend your mouth to the words, you will read them cleanly." "I will," he said. He stood a moment longer and then left without touching her. After he had gone, Cersei lifted the hand he had almost taken and looked at it as if it belonged to someone else. When afternoon settled upon the city, it did so with the indolence of a cat stretching itself along a sill, indifferent to the people needing the space. The September filled again, not as tightly perhaps, but with a new flavor in the air, less hunger for blood, more curiosity to see how the butcher counts his knives. The High Sparrow returned too, his seat after a short absence that had permitted him to wash his face and to look at himself in a basin, and to remind himself that men who wear simple robes can still love the feel of cool water on their skin. Marjorie came back with her hair repinned and without the errant curl. Some person had corrected the maid's mistake, and the correction looked like a mistake to people who had liked the errant curl. The king returned with his uncle and the taste of broth in his mouth. Qyburn returned with his unspeaking shadows. Pycelle returned, stiffer. The afternoon was for corners. The law had been laid. The facts had been hung like wet shirts. Now came the business of putting clothespins upon them so they would not blow away. It was not exciting. It was necessary. It was the part where cities are made, in the corners of rooms where there are no windows. They spoke of precedence. They spoke of the crown's rightful place in the matter of its own bed. They spoke of the faith's right to instruct, to correct. They erected, with sentences, a scaffold upon which no one might be hanged today and upon which any man might be hanged tomorrow, if it pleased. They deferred. They wondered. They measured. Men slept lightly and woke, pretending they had never closed their eyes. Someone coughed through his fingers the entire time, a sound that one grew to hate as one grows to hate a fly's persistence. Marjorie, watching, felt a small fatigue begin to coil at the base of her neck. This was the work that unmade queens, if they let it. It demanded a different set of muscles than charm. She stole a glance at Cersei and was startled to see not boredom but a species of engagement. Cersei was good at this. She had the patience for the corners. She had perhaps desired the theater of a bonfire, but she had always been a housekeeper, and housekeeping is full of corners that must be swept. Late in the afternoon, when even candles longed for their wicks to be pinched out, when the city had become aware of its own thirst, the High Sparrow rose and announced that the faith would retire not for minutes but for a small hour. There were words that suggested the length without committing to it. He made a sign that might have been a blessing and might have been a gesture to the sexton, and the sexton rang a bell not for prayer but for patience. People moved then to find water and to discuss the day as if it were some animal they meant to slaughter together and could not yet make lie down. The king was led to a little anteroom where a chair had been set and a dish of currants. He did not want currants and ate them because he had been taught what wasting looks like. Marjorie came to him and this time did take his hand. She held it lightly. She used her fingers the way a person uses a stringed instrument she knows well. "You have not failed," she said, quietly. It was not so much reassurance as instruction for how to think about what had happened. "No one has yet been asked to fall upon a sword. That is a victory on days like this." "Will they cut my uncle's throat if he speaks too well?" Tommen asked, with the solemn illogic of boys. "No," she said. "He is too old. The throat would make a mess they could not wash away before supper." Tommen laughed despite himself, a small bark of a laugh that snapped in the air like kindling. He looked startled by the presence of his own humor. Marjorie smiled and let the warmth of it go into him through the hand she still held. Cersei did not retire to any anteroom. She found a narrow corridor near the sacristy where the saints' spare noses and fingers were kept in boxes and stood with her back against the wall, feeling the cool stone press through the silk. Qyburn stood near enough to be a place to put a gaze if she wanted to make someone think she looked past them, when in truth, she looked at nothing. Presently, a figure detached itself from the shadow at the corridor's mouth and made its careful way toward her. Pycelle stopped 3 paces away and bowed more from habit than from respect. His beard hung like sorrow. "My lady," he said. "Old man," she returned. "They have lined up their arguments as men line up geese to send them to market," he said. "They think they are doing philosophy when all they are doing is wringing necks." "Do you wish to wring one?" she asked. "We could find you one small enough for your fingers." He permitted himself a dry smile at the corner of his mouth. "I wished once to instruct people," he said. "Now I wish only that they would breathe with more care. The September will run out of air before it runs out of accusations." He paused. "They will not destroy you today." "I do not intend to be destroyed any day," she said. "They might destroy what you love," he said. "That is their way. If a thing is too strong to break, they will break its reflection." He glanced toward the anteroom where the king sat and was being fed patience with currants. "You have discovered an idea," she said. "Do not hurt yourself holding it." He sighed. "Ideas used to be lighter," he said. "When I was young." "You were never young," she said, and for the first time a true amusement moved between them, a flicker of recognition that he had been born old and would die so. He made his little bow again and went back out into the light, moving with the care of a man carrying something that would spill if he took the corner too quickly. The hour lengthened itself. The September's great dome went pale and then golden, and the pigeons outside committed small crimes against the saint's shoulders. A light wind began, the kind that sneaks in at doorways when people pass through and insists upon being an event. When the high sparrow returned, his face had the look of one who has read a long chapter and found only a single sentence worth copying. He climbed the steps and looked upon them all and lifted his hands, and the city made its hush. He did not love the hush. He loved what the hush assert. That men believed someone was about to tell them what they were. He made his mouth into the shape the words require, measured, sharp where necessary, blunt where useful. "We have considered," he said. "We have lined the charges beside the evidence, as a man lays his tools beside the wood he would change. We have asked the 7 to guide our hands. This is our finding." He paused long enough that those listening could pour their own desires into the pause. "Ser Loras of House Tyrell has confessed to the sins of the flesh and to pride and to neglect of his duties as a knight of the realm. For this, and by his own request, he will put aside the knight spurs and take vows within the faith. He will serve the poor he has neglected in his pursuit of finery and of favor. He will receive the mark of the 7, which he himself has asked to bear, as penance and as remembrance." There was a stir, a little moan from somewhere in the Tyrell seats, quickly suppressed. Marjorie's hand on the rail gripped until the knuckles whitened and then released. Her brother's eyes had gone far away and come back, and he stood with the odd dignity that the condemned sometimes have when the sentence is less than death. As for Cersei of House Lannister, the high sparrow went on, and the hush sharpened until it cut lips. "The faith finds that she has confessed to adultery and that she has performed penance publicly. For this, the debt is in part paid. The faith finds that the charge of regicide is not proven to the measure that our law requires. Men die upon their own follies as often as upon other men's cruelties. We lay down that charge. As to the charge of incest and the issue of the children born of such union, we find that the proof offered is suggestive but not sufficient for the judgment that would be demanded if the charge were found. The faith will therefore declare that the Queen has placed herself under suspicion but not under sentence. She will, as a further act of penance, render unto the poor a sum of gold to be determined according to the revenues of her house, and will place herself under the supervision of the faith's appointed counselors for a period of months, during which she will submit herself to instruction. The Crown will ensure that the faith's officers are given audience and respect within the Red Keep." He had written the speech to humiliate. He had written it to eat in small bites of her. The city exhaled a long, ragged breath. It had wanted a beheading and had been given a catechism. Some were disappointed. Some were relieved and ashamed of their relief. The knives would stay in their sheaths another day, which meant they would be sharper tomorrow. Cersei stood and let the words cross her like rain. She allowed no flinch when he said instruction. She allowed nothing when he said supervision. She felt in the corner of her heart where the embers are kept an old heat stir. They had not dared the severest sentence, and for that they had chosen shackles made of rope and not iron, and rope phrase. Marjorie's eyes had gone to her brother, and then to the High Sparrow, and then to the king. She saw at once the shape of the future's argument. The faith would have men in corridors they had never walked before. The crown would announce that it had allowed this because it loved truth. The old order would suffer the insult of being made to learn by men who wore sandals. She thought of her grandmother in Highgarden, and of the way the old woman would twist her mouth when told. She thought of her own hands tying and untying the knot that had just been made. Tommen sat trembling slightly, not from fear now but from effort. He rose when he was meant to rise and read, in a voice he had laced all afternoon with patience and self-control, the words his uncle had placed in his hand, that the crown accepted the faith's advisement, that the Queen Mother would submit to counsel and would in so doing show the city how the great obey law, that the king's own heart was gladdened by the example of humility shown by his beloved good mother and by his beloved wife's family, that the crown understood that justice, to be justice, must move slowly and with mercy. He read the paper without stumbling. He thought, when he finished, that he might be permitted a breath. The breath did not come. Men cheered, and he had to hold himself still in the light of their liking. When the assembly broke, it did so with less appetite for raucousness than it had had in the morning. They had been given vegetables when they had wanted meat. They talked, and their talking was sharper, as vegetables make a man's tongue sharper. Men looked at women in new ways, and women measured the men with a new sting. The city would not sleep easily. The courts behind the September, where beggars sometimes slept and sometimes made love, filled with men arguing about law as if it were a goose to be plucked. Children played the scene, one boy lifting his hand and speaking in a quavering voice pretending to be the king, and another girl standing with her chin up pretending to be the queen, and a third child, smaller, yelling about sin and being pelted with pebble fruits. Cersei left by a side door. The mountain blocked and smoothed and carved a path without ever lifting a hand. Qyburn, walking just at her elbow, kept his mouth shut until they had passed beyond the hearing of anyone not paid to hear. "You will be visited," he said, "by men who will wish to see you humbled and by men who will wish to see you furious. We will give them tea." His eyes glinted. "There are herbs, my lady, that make men think they have seen what they have not. I will not be made a doll that nods when the string is pulled," she said. "No," he said, as if he agreed and as if he did not. "Instruct me," she said, and the word came strange to her mouth, a thing she had not said except to the man she had once allowed into her bed, and to no good result. "What do I lose? What do? Oh, I gain." "You lose the pleasure of closing doors," Qyburn said. "You gain the knowledge of how many doors you may walk through that other people believe are not yours. The faith will inventory you, so to speak. They will count your virtues as they count coins in a bowl. We will let them count. We will add and subtract at night. We will make balances they do not see." "And the Tyrells? They are pleased," Qyburn said, amused by how simple the complicated often is. "They keep their boy. They imagine that you have been placed upon a leash. They do not notice that someone must hold the leash. They believe it is them. It may be them. It may be you." She gave him a long look. "I will never be held," she said. He did not answer. He did not need to. He had guided men who were sure they would never be held. He had watched them slip their heads into the loop of the rope, had watched them declare that the rope was a necklace. In Highgarden's colors, Marjorie gathered her brother in the yard where the September's shadow fell, like a mercy and a chain both. Loras had gone pale under his tan. The eyes he turned upon her were eyes she had not known when they were children. Suffering alters the color. She reached for him. He let her. She put a hand to his forehead as a mother would, and then tucked her fingers under his chin and lifted. "I will make this bearable," she said. "I will help you be rid of me," he said, bravely, and that was worse. She shook her head. "No," she said. "I will teach you to live with yourself, so that when you must be rid of yourself for the city's sake, you will do it with gladness, not out of relief from pain. You make such things sound like songs," he said. "They are," she said. Songs we sing when we are too tired to speak. He smiled then, an ugly, beautiful smile that was itself a vow. He turned to the brother who would take him to the place where the faith houses those who have put away swords and filled their hands with ladles. The brother took him gently by the arm. Marjorie watched him go and made herself memorize the line of his back, the way his hair lay against his neck, the way his shoulders still carried an arrogance that poverty could not shake out at once. She watched and did not cry. Tears are a language. She would not speak it in public. Evening came, and with it the sense the city has when it has survived something. The want to celebrate and the want to hate. Fires were lit in hearths and in braziers. Men went to women and women went to men, and sometimes men went to men and women to women, and the city, which does not care so long as coin changes hands and does not change hands in the wrong direction, listened without listening to their sighs. The water drew its black sheet over its face. The Milky Way rose, whitening the sky like a scab that has not yet fallen. In the Red Keep, the queen sat and allowed a tray to be placed before her. She did not eat. She sat as a statue sits, with a dignity that is half will, half physics. She thought of fire and of rope and of slow, beautiful vengeance. She thought of the girl with the braid and of her father's face and of a prophecy she had heard once from a woman who smelled of old apples. She considered that the path of the day had not led where any of the players had imagined when they woke with their various appetites. This was the city's lesson and hers. Futures are made of afternoons like this one, not only of mornings that surprise and nights that burn. In his small chamber, Tommen slept badly and dreamed of climbing a ladder that led to a roof. And when he reached the roof, it was not a roof at all but a floor 100 spans above the ground. And there were more ladders. And his wife stood on one of them and smiled at him and said, "Don't look down." And his mother stood on another and did not smile and did not tell him what to do. He woke with the taste of currants still in his mouth and did not know whether to be grateful that the dream was over. In the room where the faith housed its guests, Loras lay with a wet cloth upon his brow and counted the beams in the ceiling. 7. He smiled at the stupidity of the symmetry and slept, and when he woke the cloth had gone warm and the brother watching had nodded off and the candle had burned to a miniature of itself, and he had the thought that people have when the worst has not happened. I can do this one more day. In her own bed, Marjorie turned on her side and looked toward the window where, beyond, the city lay with its knees drawn up like a child sleeping. She put her fingers lightly on her belly as women do when they are thinking about children they might bear or might not. She thought of a boy with fair hair who wanted goodness and a mother with iron in her blood and a man in a brown robe who loved rules as if they were his children. She smiled, and in that smile there was steel. She closed her eyes. She would wake early. She had many conversations to have, and some of them would not be made with words. Somewhere in the depths of the city, a rat ran along a rope above a canal of black water. The rat paused, sniffed, went on. It did not know that men had argued about what justice is. It did not know that queens had stood as if they were statues and that a boy had tried to make his voice into a plank. The rope held, and the rat crossed, and on the other side there were crumbs. It ate, and in eating it did what all creatures do. It continued. The September, which had not burned, creaked a little in the night. Stones do that, settling themselves after a day when they have had to hold so much. The saints watched with their indifferent stone eyes. One pigeon slept on a saint's shoulder and shat upon it, and the saint did not mind. The bell rope hung straight. A brother rose in the gray hour and put on his sandals and crossed himself and went to ring the bell for prime. And when he pulled, the bell rang, and the city opened its eyes again. The day would not be the same as the day before. It would not be different either. It would be another day in a city where a queen had stood up and had not burned, and that fact would be a stone upon which other men would stand or stumble. The story would go on. The morning smelled of sea and of baking bread. The sky was clean. The trial had not ended anything. It had made many small beginnings. Cersei woke again before the bells, and this time when she rose she did not stare at her face in the glass. She crossed to the window and looked out over the water and put her hand upon the stone until the stone gave up the small warmth it had gathered from yesterday's sun. Behind her the door opened and shut, and she did not turn. She would not ask for the morning's list. She would make it. She would be instructed and instruct. She would pour tea and refuse it. She would see the high sparrow's mouth make the little purse it made when irritated. She would watch Marjorie perform goodness like a craftswoman and admire the workmanship while plotting how to unpick the seams. She would teach her son that kings are not ladders but roofs, and that roofs require beams, and that beams require men with calluses. She would sew and unsew. She would cut and be cut. She would not burn. Not today. Behind her, Qyburn, soft-voiced, said, "There is already talk that the faith will wish to examine the matter of the crown's revenues." She half smiled. "Let them," she said. "We will show them numbers and take from them names. People always prefer to count things. We will give them something to count and count them as they count." Qyburn made a small sound that could be taken for assent or for laughter. "And you have visitors. Let them wait," she said. "They are the kind who do not wait," he said. "They are patience dressed as impatience. They will stand outside the door and grow roots through the stone. They are the counselors the faith sends. One is a woman. One has the voice of a schoolmaster who has never learned to sing." "Good," she said. "I am fond of women who think themselves holy and men who think themselves teachers. They make the best listeners in the end." She turned then, and in doing so she set the day. It would be a day of corners. It would be a day of small victories and smaller humiliations. It would be a day that would lead toward a night that would lead toward another day. She lifted her chin. The air smelled of salt and of lye and of the roses the Tyrells had pinned on their horses and that had fallen and lay now in the dust behind the September. Petals trodden into a bruise that would blacken the stone for a few days and then fade. She smiled without showing teeth. She crossed the room. She opened the door. Across the city, Marjorie woke before her maids and lay, counting the breaths it took to remember her brother's face at the moment of his vow. She stored it the way a prudent woman stores coin. She would spend it carefully. She thought already of how to fashion these counselors into allies, these rules into scaffolds that might be moved, these humiliations into occasions. She thought that the High Sparrow, for all his poverty, understood the luxury of power better than men who wore rings on every finger. She would have to teach him the limits of his indulgence. She smiled. It would be pleasurable. Tommen, heavy-headed, sat up and reached for the water beside his bed and drank it and made a face because it had grown warm. He swung his legs over the side and steadied himself on the floor and felt, surprisingly, that he might be a person in his own right today. The sensation would pass. He would have it again. He would learn to catch it and keep it for longer. He would fail. He would succeed. He would love his wife and his mother in different and inconvenient ways. He would be instructed by men who loved rules and by women who loved results. He would grow. The High Sparrow, already at his desk, sharpened his quill with a knife that had once carved bread. He wrote a list. Men who believe in God write lists as if God will look over their shoulder and check off items. He felt a quiet contentment that might be confused for smugness. He told himself it was only satisfaction at having moved a stone from one place to another without dropping it on his own foot. He whispered a prayer. The words were simple. Simple words are hardest to say truthfully. He said them nonetheless. He folded his hands. He waited for the city to come to him with its sins in baskets. The September did not blow. It held. The city held. The stories in it leaned against each other, shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow, and found a balance of a kind. There would be cracks. There always are when too much weight is put upon any one place. The bells rang. The day began. The game, which had seemed for a moment to be the kind that ends in flames and falling domes, revealed itself to be the kind that ends not at all, only unspools, requiring patience neither gods nor monsters always possess. On the hill of Baelor, a child bent and picked up a petal that had escaped the Tyrell's mourning. She smoothed it between finger and thumb and then pressed it to her lip and tasted the dust upon it. It was bitter. She laughed. She ran away. The petal fell. The wind lifted it and carried it. A brief green-silver flicker, down the steps. It vanished into the crowd, as all small, beautiful things do, not destroyed, precisely, but transformed into the ordinary. And still, for an instant before it disappeared, it caught the light.